Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, Oakland men's basketball game reviews, the title as long as it needs to be. I am your host of the GioMoShow, Giovanni Moscieri, Oakland University alum and WXOU alum. Sadly, this week, the Golden Grizzlies have not done well with a 68-64 loss to Eastern Michigan on the blacktop. And here with me to help break it down, to help us cope a little bit and to find hope and solace is returning from last week, the Oakland beat writer for the HoriZone Roundtable, Griffin Beers. Griffin, welcome back to the GioMoShow.
Thanks for having me back. I'm glad I was good enough to get the invite.
for sure, man. And I hate for it to be on kind of bad news coming, but Oakland had some issues that were brightened and discovered more on the blacktop against Eastern Michigan. So to start things off, give me your initial thoughts about that game, big takeaways, and just kind of what happened for a lot of those who missed it.
Well, I think a lot of people were hoping, including myself, that facing that big competition and then you come home and you play a team that, is on the mid-major level, that Oakland would come out and get a win, not a blowout win, but comfortable, kind of like 7 to 10 point win, and just have everything look good. And it started out that way. I thought the first 5-6 minutes of the first half was the best, the cleanest that Oakland's looked all year. And then things kind of slowed down, and then they had a really good end of the half, and I think it was an 8-point lead going into halftime. And then we kind of saw the flaws that we saw in the bye games that Oakland has played come in full force in that second half. Just no offense, no easy points, a lot of missed threes, which I expected coming back home. That I wasn't expecting them to light the world on fire, but I was expecting a few more makes and stuff like that. So it was a bit concerning in that second half to lose it, but I think there are a couple things to take away stuff to take away that can provide some hope for the future. You look at like Alan Mukeba fouling out in 12, 13 minutes or whatever he played. He's got to be smarter than that. Like, that can't happen again. But really right now, like, that's Oakland's offense. It's him and Baru scoring in the post and maybe DQ getting to the rim or something like that. That is where they score. And so Allen has to be smarter than that. And then obviously at some point, Oakland is not going to be the worst 3-point shooting team in the country.
It's literally the worst at this point.
There are your two reasons for optimism.
So, and I love those, and I want to add a little bit of numbers to kind of illustrate what we're talking about here. In the first half, Oakland was 14 of 20 from the field. That's good for 70%, but from three, 16.7%. They made only 1 out of 6 attempts. But then in the second half, the field goal percentage dropped from 70 to 33%. But what did stay the same was the three-point shooting, still at 16.7%, leaving them at 3 and 18 for the game. And yeah, I was definitely expecting that to improve, but I will say that the Eastern crowd in the arena, I was at the event and I spent the second half with some friends from the student section, and that Eastern Michigan crowd was definitely fighting against that of the Grizz gang in the arena to where I was almost clapping to their beat, thinking that it was from the band. I mean, that's kind of from where I was sitting, but literally that's how loud that small section of fans were, and I think that we're expecting a little bit more of fan support and noise from that sense as well.
Yeah, and that's going to happen in these in-state mid-major games, even power conference games. You see, if it's in-state, the other team's traveling pretty well. And, I think the crowd size was not, where we would have liked it, I think, in the arena.
I thought too.
Yeah, but, it's a good atmosphere when both sides have a vocal party. So
definitely. And when it got to the last part of the game, like especially those final 2 minutes where Oakland was chasing, it was, close and almost having it like that. It was loud and it got a very exciting finish. So at least for someone who got tickets to it, they got a good show out of it. But you're just wishing that Oakland would come out on the other side of that. So we covered the three-point shooting. We covered Mukeba fouling out with, I checked, it was about 10 minutes left in the second half that he fouled out. But just in general for the offense, you touched on it a little bit last week where in your experience and your time with the team, it's the defense that takes time to develop and for everyone to learn Campy's zone and defense. But it's unusual for the offense to kind of follow or actually replace that slow developing part of their game. Like, what would you attribute that to? Have you seen teams like that in the past?
I think yes. I think especially shooting, we have seen this in the last couple of years. I think back to it was the 21-22 season with Jamal Cain. That team went down to Florida. They went to West Virginia. They went to Oklahoma State, and they ended up going 4-2, 5-2 in November. And they were also like in the bottom 5, bottom 10 of the 3-point shooting teams in the country. So I think it winning cures everything, I would say, because back then it wasn't a concern if they weren't shooting well because they were winning and they were still defending and doing all these things they had to do. But now, I mean, with the losses that are coming on, and after that Eastern loss especially, everyone's going to point to, hey, you're not making shots, you're not going to win games. But I think what we have seen out of the defense, especially down the stretch of that Eastern Michigan game, and I even asked Campy about it in the press conference after, it was every single time the defense needed to come up with a stop, they ended up coming with a stop. And I think that's what Campy gave me a good answer where he said, that's why I'm hopeful where this can turn around. It's not, it's not we're not playing hard. It's not we don't have talent. It's just things aren't going our way. But he likes how they practice and he likes the talent on the team. So, I think we got to stick with him for a little bit.
That we sure will. I want to take a look at the box scores, just some standouts to get your thoughts on it. And I was looking through. I didn't realize that DQ had 14 rebounds in that game, which was the leading rebounder on the floor by a long margin.
Yeah.
To see that DQ bringing a lot more than just offense to his game, and he showed that last year too.
Yeah, and I think that's going back to what Campy is talking about, right? DQ, here's a guy who was 0 for 5 from 3, right? I think it was 0 for 5. True. Is that correct?
0 for 5,
but
yeah.
He's out there like doing everything he can to try to get a win, right? He's grabbing 14 rebounds. The threes weren't falling for him, so he started going into the paint in the second half and getting everywhere he wanted towards the basket. And I think that's kind of the attitude around this whole team right now is, the shots aren't falling, but we're seeing guys step up and do things that, like, when the shots are falling, that you feel confident that they're going to be able to pull out these close games and close wins.
I also wanted to point out Baru because especially with the friends that I was sitting with in the arena, God, we love Baru, and I love him too. He was showing a little bit of what he was advertised to be, the high-flying, slam dunks and very efficient. I think he started, at one point he was 5 for 5, ended up finishing 7 for 9 for a team-leading 16 points. What did you make of Baru, especially in those last 10 minutes when Mukeba fouled out, able to kind of play that position in the middle and be very efficient?
I think that's the big thing. I think when he was the centerpiece, he wasn't slowed down. He was still able to make plays. He was still able to score when Allen wasn't in there with him. And I think that's something that why the team last year had so much success. You look at, they had 2 options in the post where it was, you felt great about them scoring every time they got the ball with Trey and Chris, right? I think Allen proved right away that, hey, if you give him the ball, you feel good about him scoring. And we were kind of waiting for Baru to kind of take that next step into this year and step into that scoring role. And I mean, he's the leading scorer on the team right now throughout the season. So I think that is something, again, like these other areas, Oakland is right where they need to be. It's just not falling from the 3-point line. But I think Baru, it's been very nice to see the step up he's taken this season.
Yeah, my friends also really just like to shout "Baru." It comes very well for the audience. It rolls off the tongue. So to wrap things up, I'm sure you'll have a little bit more intel and analysis of the matchup. But we got Toledo coming up on Saturday the 30th at Toledo, which has been an issue. It's been a great rivalry and battle every year that we play them. But what's your sense going into this Toledo game, especially without Oakland traveling into warmer weather for some Thanksgiving tournaments, able to focus on their way to Toledo? What's your take there?
I think, well, before I get to Toledo, that point you brought up is really interesting. Because after that loss to Eastern, I think even the team, I know the fans definitely felt this, but even the team was like, oh, geez, what the heck's happening? Like, we can't win that one. When are we going to win a game? And I think it was very important for them to have this whole week to practice and kind of figure some things out instead of going to a tournament and playing 3 games in 3 days, right? So I think the schedule really, in that way, laid out really nice, and they actually got kind of lucky that their tournament isn't until Christmas time, and they got this week to practice. But moving to Toledo, I mean, every year it feels like they have the same team. It seems like they get up and down, they score very efficiently, and then they don't guard very well. And so I think it's that way again. And I think so. Oakland's defense is going to be tested. But I think this is an opportunity, especially for guys like Allen and Baru, to kind of get the offense flowing and to really get some shots to fall, right? And if the perimeter guys are seeing the post guys dominating, and you're scoring almost every time in the beginning of the game, hopefully that'll instill some confidence in their shot making. And so I think we'll have a chance to see that. It'll be a hard game to win because Toledo's very good. They won the MAC 4 times in a row. They can put up points on the board, but it should be a good opportunity for the offense to get going. And Oakland definitely can win. It's definitely not a non-winnable game. So
definitely, but if you were going to win one of the 2 MAC games, Eastern would have been the more likely of the 2. But
yes,
definitely not impossible for them to get a win on the road. It will be difficult. And my mind goes back to this past Greg Campy radio show. Malcolm Christie was the guest this week, and kind of similar to what Jason Woodrich had in the opening show for this year, that they're confident in the shooting. It's going to come eventually. They're as confident that it will start to, just they'll be taking the same shots, they'll be giving it the same confidence, they'll just go in. So they're waiting, and they're confident that it'll pop eventually, and hopefully Toledo would be the place for that to be, because you don't want that to happen in HoriZone League play when we end up hosting Wright State on December 5th. So you want to get this going sooner than later.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the other thing too that will get better is the coaching staff, particularly Campy, will figure out, hey, maybe maybe this guy can't shoot going to his left, so I'm going to stop calling that play or something like that. Or maybe this guy, if we get him into the corner, he can make shots for us. And I think they'll kind of start to figure those things out and put the guys into better positions to succeed. And I think this thing will get humming pretty soon.
And it'll be a lot of fun to keep up to date with it. And if you guys want to keep up to date with all things Golden Grizzlies, then Griffin Beers is the guy to go to. Oakland beat writer for the HoriZone Roundtable. You could go to HoriZoneRoundtable.com for all your info. Be sure to check out Griffin Beers' fantastic work that he has covering our Golden Grizzlies. So that's going to wrap it up for us here on the GioMoShow Oakland men's basketball game reviews. Griffin, thank you once again for coming onto the show once again.
Thanks for having me, sir.
And we'll see you all next time. Be sure to subscribe right here on YouTube, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast for weekly coverage of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, and not just basketball, but in all sports. That right here on the GioMoShow. My name is Giovanni Mosheri, and we'll see you guys next week right here on the GioMoShow.